the Ohio Senate race that happened between, or the debate, I should say, in the Ohio Senate race that happened in Ohio between Tim Ryan and J.D. Vance is a pretty good illustration of the future of the Democratic Party and the future of the Republican Party, or this realignment that I'm talking about, this shakeup within both parties. It's actually funny that it's happening at the same time, because when political parties evolve in their ideology, it doesn't typically happen simultaneously. It doesn't happen that the Democrat Party evolves and the Republican Party evolves at the same time, and then, you know, like a tadpole turns into the new kind of frog that they're going to be. But this is a pretty good example of what I'm talking about. So I think it's very clear J.D. Vance absolutely crushed this debate. I have rarely seen someone in a debate conduct the debating part of the debate so masterfully. The J.D. Vance's performance against Tim Ryan can actually be a textbook example, training materials to other political candidates on how to win a debate, how to operate, from everything from your demeanor, the poise, the tone of voice, the tenor of voice, the topical choices of what to say and how to say it. I mean, what J.D. Vance did is he acknowledged what voters cared about. And this is a mistake that a lot of Republicans make, is they come to voters and they say, this is what we think you should care about. And voters are like, what? No, this is what we care about. And Republicans try to convince voters to care about what Republicans in Washington, D.C. care about. But what J.D. Vance did this week is he spoke directly to voters about what they cared about. And he showed voters how conservative values best serve them, best fulfill the needs and the desires that voters have already previously articulated. So it's a way of politicians meeting voters on their own playing field, which is what politicians are supposed to do, because voters elect politicians to represent their needs. Politicians have just gotten way off track. The other thing that J.D. Vance did is he played offense in a way that oftentimes Republican candidates are afraid to do. He played offense by flipping the stupid attacks from the Democrat, from Tim Ryan, or in the questions. He flipped those attacks, not in a defensive way. He certainly debunked them, and he roundly debunked them, but he didn't stop there. He debunked them, and then he highlighted the extreme position of the Democratic Party, the extreme position of Tim Ryan, and how Tim Ryan has been a part of the extreme position of the Democratic Party as a whole. And throughout the entirety of this debate, J.D. Vance was calm. He was poised. He was in charge. I mean, Tim Ryan was like agitated and fidgety, and like his body language was just horrendous. You'll see this when we look at a video in just a second. But J.D. was just unafraid to stand up for what's right, which it has become sometimes a lost art among the Republican Party. So the first example of this is Tim Ryan tried to attack J.D. Vance on abortion. And what does the pro-abortion left always do? They always take it to this hyperbolic scenario where if you and I say, listen, we believe life begins at conception, we think that abortion should be illegal because it's ending a human life. We don't have a right to end a human life based on their location in the mother's womb. The Democrats always say, okay, but what about if a 10-year-old child was raped? And there was that story, as you remember, from Ohio of the 10-year-old girl that was raped and impregnated and wanted an abortion. And Tim Ryan tried to weaponize that story against J.D. Vance. And this is how Vance responded.
As an exception.
Look, I've always believed in reasonable exceptions. This is a misrepresentation of my view, but let's hear it from me, not from Congressman Ryan. I absolutely think the 10-year-old girl, the case that we've, of course, heard a lot about, an incredibly tragic situation. I mean, look, I've got a 9-year-old baby girl at home. I cannot imagine what that's like for the girl, for her family. God forbid something like that would happen. I have said repeatedly on the record that I think that girl should be able to get an abortion if she and her family so choose to do so. But let's talk about that case. Because why was a 10-year-old girl raped in our community, raped in our state in the first place? The thing the media and Congressman Ryan, they talk about this all the time. The thing they never mentioned is that poor girl was raped by an illegal alien, somebody that should have never been in this state in the first place. You voted so many times against border wall funding, so many times for amnesty, Tim. If you had done your job, she would have never been raped in the first place. Do your job on border security. Don't lecture me about opinions I don't actually have.
Did you see Tim Ryan's body language? He's literally standing there like a child standing in the corner being punished. Tim Ryan, I mean, this is how a debate is done. J.D. Vance, I mean, what a horrendous story, a heartbreaking story, a tragedy. Tim Ryan is trying to use this as a political weapon against J.D. Vance, and J.D.'s like, wait a second. What you're talking about is you're talking about an abortion, something that objectively kills the life of an unborn baby, something that objectively will cause harm to this 10-year-old child. And instead of talking about that, why don't we talk about what could prevent this from ever happening in the first place? Guys, I don't think there's any comeback that you could possibly give to that. Like, do Democrats not want to prevent the rape of a 10-year-old girl? That's the position that J.D. Vance put Tim Ryan in when Tim Ryan thought he had this great argument against Vance.